Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. Nick Nanton, appreciate you showing up today, man.
Good to be here, man. I always look forward to our conversations. We enjoy them. We disagree on many things and agree on maybe about just as many, and it's always fun.
Yeah, I love it. Well, one of the things that I think is beautiful about what you just said is many people in life aren't capable of having relationships that exist like that. And I was thinking earlier today about fundamental differences in our approach to life and how we continue to maintain a very close relationship through that. And it's unique, and I love it, man. It's awesome.
I do too, man. I think I don't know. There's certainly this rhetoric from the media, and there's certainly people are paper tigers on their keyboards or whatever. But I don't know many people who really get into it about a lot of things. I guess if you want to be disagreeable, you can. But I have a lot of faith in humanity. I'd like to think there's a lot more relationships like that out there. But I guess maybe a lot of people just stay on the surface and don't dig down. But I think we challenge each other, and I think that regardless of, I have my own beliefs. Obviously, you have yours as well. But I think if someone is moving through life with their own set of beliefs, but still trying to be a good, productive citizen of society, like, I'm never mad at them. I just have different beliefs sometimes. So I appreciate that about you. And I too appreciate digging in on that stuff. Yeah, I love it, man. Well, we'll see where we go today, but, you have always been an interesting character to me, and it continues to get wild and crazy as time goes on. So last time I saw you, you had 16 Emmys. I did a little poking today, and now you have 22 Emmys. And this is not a long period of time that has elapsed. This is like 6 months or something. And apparently 36 nominations. On top of that, you have done quite a bit in the music space. None of which is how I originally met you or know you. I know you as a recovering attorney and entrepreneur in the truest sense, and drink thief. And fundamentally, that's my anchor for Nick Nanton. It's a solid anchor. I mean, it doesn't sway far from there. So, just to make sure we give accurate information, yes. I did go, I believe, from 16 to 22 at the same time. I think I won 6 that night. But it was that was since before COVID, I'm pretty sure, because there was just a bunch of messes with all that stuff during. Actually, I won maybe a few of those during, whatever, but I had them when I last saw you. We just didn't talk about it, which is fine. And so, I don't like to be objectified, Brad. I'm not just a number, so I don't just talk about 22, 22, 20. No. And so it's been a super fun thing. I'll start here. Up to a few weeks ago, you'll hear me say this a lot because I discover things all the time, so I'm not that quick. So up to a few weeks ago, I discovered, I would say that, when I was talking to someone about doing a documentary or a film, I'm mostly dealing with business people. And even if I'm doing something creative, when it comes down to the money and the other things, it's business people. I say, look, I'm really a business guy first and a creative guy second. Well, as I really just dug a little deeper on that, I was like, I'm not sure that's accurate. I think more accurately, I could say I'm a creative guy that had to learn how to do business to get back to being creative. And I think it's a really big distinction. And that has been the story of my life. I mean, musician, songwriter, I did a lot of producing of records. And honestly, I think as a young kid, we were immigrants. My family had some ups and downs. There was some financial hardship right around when things started to, right around the time I wanted certain types of clothes and shoes and stuff like that. And my parents were super supportive, but just were trying to hold on to their home that they built. They built their dream home, 2,400 square feet, and a tennis court next door to it, because my dad had to walk uphill both ways, that whole story, to a tennis court on the island of St. Vincent. But so it was always I always say we had more love than we could spend, but things were not super easy. And I was involved in music and very competitive tennis. Tennis was super expensive. You and I have played some tennis together. Tennis was super expensive. And so I really was encouraged, but I had to learn how to earn early on. And then as I went through undergrad, I did all the things I was supposed to do with education, which I'm thankful I was pushed to do it. I know it's not for everybody. I would agree to that right up front, but got an undergrad degree in finance, finished really in 2.5 years, stayed an extra semester to get the scholarship money. So graduated in 3 years and then went to law school after that. And I went to law school because my parents encouraged me to get a profession. They said, Nick, if you and your brother, we just want you to get a profession that you can do whatever else you want in life. You can always fall back on it. We both said no. He goes and becomes a child forensic psychiatrist. I'm not going to do that, but I knew like entertainment and business, a lot of CEOs and people had law degrees. And I guess I would just say, I'll take a breath and you can ask whatever you want. But I think I write off my law degree all the time because I have my license. I passed the bar. It was miserable, but I did everything. And I really downplay law school an awful lot because I really don't feel like I learned that much there. I honestly feel like I almost quit a few times. My mom was like, dude, if you quit, you're going to hate yourself. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I really was just trying to get through. I was running businesses I was in there the first year we got Wi-Fi in class. I was running the internet businesses in class and I was trying to dodge getting asked questions. So I wasn't doing my reading and because I hated it. I really hated it. But I will say this, I'm sure I learned even by osmosis. So I'll just admit that I have a bias that I probably didn't learn that much. I probably did. But more importantly, it taught me a huge lesson about positioning, which is what I've ended up doing a lot of my career and help a lot of people with. Once I've been in music since I was 16 and I was managing bands and went to law school. The moment I went to law school, instead of just being a kid at the University of Florida, college kid who manages bands, I was all of a sudden a law student managing bands. And even from then, it was just different. People would just, oh, that's interesting. And all the way up through to today, I had a conversation about this yesterday. I'm in negotiation for working on a documentary about like a huge poker player. And they're like, well, what do you think? How to blah, 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 and asking questions. Like, honestly, here's a couple things I've been told. When I sit down to do an interview with someone, I often get credibility because of my experience. And they know that I've dealt with some people that even most of these people like have an affinity for or looked up to or are icons to them, like Larry King, like you can see his tie and suspenders right there. Secondarily, I know that they learn because I've seen other producers who it's not their fault. They sit down and do a video interview with somebody and they just don't get a lot of respect because this celebrity, whoever it is, just is like, why am I talking to this kid or this person? But the moment they learn that I'm a lawyer, but I'm here interviewing them for a documentary, they're like, all of a sudden I'm interesting and they feel like, oh, they didn't just, whatever the truth is in their mind, I feel like they go, oh, they didn't just send some kid to interview me. Like, this is interesting. Let's talk. Yep. And so it's been really interesting how I probably don't give my parents nearly enough credit for how much that decision has helped me in life. But I really did hate every living second of
it. Well, I have a lot of thoughts there. One, for sure, I think it might actually, I actually think the label of doctor also has similar weight when you throw it around in a business context, depending on what you do, right? But there's something about both of those labels that all of a sudden you have a different level of credibility, whether it's warranted or not, right?
There were lots of idiots in law school, lots of them.
100%. And oddly, in business, if somebody says they have an MBA, I disregard that much, much, much quicker than I would an attorney.
Yes, me too, because it's not that that's not a valuable degree, but most people, I don't know, there's so much to MBAs that, I read a thing recently that basically like, it's better to not have an MBA than to have one. And it was a hot take, right? And they were making a point. I'm sure it's a valuable degree to have, but your point being, when I meet someone with an MBA, if they truly are a student of that game and that game only, they've learned how to do a lot of things that I don't need in the size of the business that I have. And I don't know, I'm not sure who needs it, quite frankly, in this day and age. But like anything else, I think the law degree in a lot of cases is outdated. I get frustrated. My kids go to a really good school, but like it's sort of unacceptable to me that they don't have access to the best teachers and tutors in the world. Like they should. They should have access, right? Because it's the internet. Like you can go to Khan Academy and find someone to make statistics interesting for free. But I got to deal with a teacher that doesn't get it. Like this doesn't make any sense to me. So I think we could rip on education in many ways of how outdated it is. I'm doing a big literacy documentary right now, which is blowing my mind in the education system. But I think, it's complex and that's why it's an issue. If it wasn't complex, it wouldn't be an issue. So I don't want to just plaster on top. But your point is well taken. I think, the MBA one is a really interesting one too.
It is. Yeah. And so I want to talk about your specific path and what business meant to you. But first, just for the opportunity to expose people to some very cool projects that you've been a part of. What are a couple of the, I'd say sort of higher profile documentaries that you've done? There are some big names that you get to interview that you do things for. What are you working on now?
Yeah.
Those are all super cool for people to hear about.
Yeah, man. So I did Peter Diamandis' life story of the X Prize, and obviously that covered the first X Prize was the first private space flight. So through that, I got to interview all sorts of people. I'd known them before, but I got to interview Tony Robbins, got to interview Richard Branson. I met will.i.am through that. I got to interview lots of rock stars through that. I'm currently doing Dick Vitale's life story, the ESPN commentator who, quite frankly, I didn't know how big that story was till I got into it. But I've interviewed so far. I've interviewed Charles Barkley. I've interviewed Chris Berman, Stephen A. Smith. Scott Van Pelt. All the college basketball coaches, Coach K, John Calipari at Kentucky, Digger Phelps from Notre Dame, Mike Bray, Boeheim at Syracuse. Like there's really Kenny Chesney. There's like nobody that's off the Dickie V list. Like, and all of a sudden I just started getting these texts like, "Hey Nick, Chris Fowler from ESPN here." I'm like, hello. One time I got a text. It's me, Dickie V, Charles Barkley, and Shaq. I'm like, did I just get on like the Mount Rushmore of basketball, like through a text? Like what happened? And so I'm almost done with that one right now. There's some big announcements coming out about that soon. So I got that one. I did Larry King's life story. I did Robert Kiyosaki's life story from Rich Dad Poor Dad. Of course, I did Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach. I did Jack Canfield's. Really interestingly, I decided I wanted to try my hand at filmmaking. I made one film, got 2 Emmy nominations and won 1 Emmy in the Ohio Valley region. And I was like, all right, this is fun. Let me do some more of it. I've done more of it, but really I was in the business world and I found this niche that no one was telling business people's stories. And I think entrepreneurs are heroes in their own way when they operate the right way, at least. So I took this really unique position of, hey, let me tell your story. And what I didn't expect was the network I would gain from doing the documentaries, because everyone introduces you to the coolest people they know. Like, oh, you're telling my story. I want you to know how cool I am. Let me introduce you to all these people. And so my I would say my Rolodex, but I sound like I'm 97 if I say that. But like my phone, the numbers I have in my phone are pretty insane, just because when you take care of somebody, you do a good job, they introduce lots of people. And when you don't overstep your boundaries, when like I can ask for favors, but I understand what a favor is worth and when to ask for and how to ask for and how to have tact, how to, all the things that many people don't understand. The world opens up to you. And it's funny, just recently I started getting invited to these events and I started getting texts from different people. And I honestly was like, I've been working my whole life. I've been playing guitar since I was 6, immigrant kid. It's not like my parents are from, the slums of Haiti or something, which I've been to and they're not fun. We're from Barbados. Pretty developed island, but there were things that just didn't feel natural here as we were finding our way through it. And I loved music. I loved entertainment, but I've been wanting to be in these rooms my whole life. And I thought, based on my own self-awareness, my own skill set, my own hard work, my own dedication, my own creativity, I thought I could earn a seat at the table, and I thought I could deliver if I could ever get one. But getting a seat at the table was so friggin' hard. But all of a sudden in the last 6 months, it's probably been longer than that, but I recognized it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm finally in. Like all of a sudden, like no one asked Kenny Chesney, hey, do you mind if I give Nick your number? It was just say, hey, Kenny, it's Dick. Here's Nick, and it's like, and I've now got a cool relationship with Kenny Chesney. I've been pitching him songs in his text message, and he likes some of them, which is even cooler. But it's been a really cool path of like figuring out what I'm bad at to find out what I'm good at. Filmmaking is the easiest thing I've ever done in my life because I'm so incompetent at so much of it. So I really can't get in someone else's lane. All I can do is do what I do, and I do it, I do what I do the best of my ability. But man, it's so much easier than things that you're pretty good at and you think you could get a lot better at. Like that's a really hard path. And so finding, as we both know Dan Sullivan well, finding my unique ability, you can only do it by finding what you're bad at. And like then that helps you realize what you're good at, but what we're best at, what we were born so gifted at, we all write it off like it's trash because it comes so naturally. So a big part of my work I do now, even when I interview these people and tell their stories, even the biggest names you would think of, I help them uncover what's unique about them because they've typically written it off because it came so naturally. And it's a really unique process because, Michael Jordan's like, he's like, you mean everyone wasn't born being able to dunk from the free throw line? I mean, that's an obnoxious example, but the things that are so easy for us, we think everyone else can do them just because we were born that way.
Yeah. Well, you said something that was funny. I mean, of the 1,500 things you just said, but one of them was in the last 6 months, all of a sudden I've got a seat at the table and my network is huge. And that's comical because of course it's not the last 6 months. For the last 15 years or 20 years, you've been building this, right? And so you have this recognition of quote unquote, all of a sudden, but,
yes.
Backing out to, college, law degree, and then getting into business. What was I know some of that background, but what was the initial business and what were you actually focused on doing to make money, in that interim period between I'm a creative, I need to learn business to get back to being a creative? Yeah.
So, just between us girls, you can't spread this beyond to anyone else. I'll share with you that my first gig, as a kid, hard to say it, but I was a clown. So I figured out at 15 years old that I could make, like someone got me for a birthday or something, some relative got me a balloon animal book with balloons. And they're like,
this explains a lot, Nick.
Yeah. There's like 3 patterns that are super easy and you can make anything fast. And I was like, this is easy. And then we would go to Church Street Station. You've been in Orlando for a while. It used to exist. There's a little magic shop.
Sure.
I buy little magic stuff. And I was like, what? I wonder if anything I know how to do, I can make money with. And so I started teaching tennis lessons. I don't remember what I charged, but it was like $5 per kid for an hour or whatever. But when I get 10 kids, I can make $50 an hour, which, in the early 90s was a lot of money for a kid, right? And then I realized, man, maybe the skills that I have I wonder what clowns make. So I flip open the phone book. Yes, I'm 42. I'm showing my age here. I used to be the youngest guy in every room. Now I'm getting to not be. And I know you understand this. And so I'm like, hi, I'd like to, how much does it cost to hire a clown? They're like $150 an hour. I'm like, done. So I remember, if you remember Garfield's Halloween special, if you remember that far back, there's a clown called Binky the Clown that was like a total jerk. And so I became Binky the Clown and I did some parties and made $150 an hour. So fast forward from there, I'm doing that sort of stuff. And then I end up getting into, it's a sort of a long story, but I got into doing custom screen printing and embroidery. I started working for this place. And then I realized I think I could sell this stuff and make the money myself. So I started going around to, my family had been in the car business. So I knew there's a lot of turnover in car dealers with salespeople. So I started going and cold calling on car dealers, which selling car dealers is not that easy. They're pretty good salespeople. But so I built this screen printing and embroidery business. I ended up servicing Suzuki and South America and the Caribbean, Mitsubishi, the Southeast United States, built some accounts and went to college. And I started doing all the screen printing for all the fraternity and sorority date functions. So I think my freshman year of college, I made 60, 70 grand. I spent it like I was a king. No one paid for dinner. No, we had a hell of a time, right? And speaking of tax bills, you learn that lesson pretty young. When you spend it all of a sudden you get a tax bill. But so I started doing all that. And then really I want to get back to music. I didn't make it. I was recruited to play in some smaller colleges for tennis, but again, I sort of realized I wasn't going to be a pro tennis player. It just wasn't going to happen. So I started focusing more on music, started producing a lot, managing a lot. And in undergrad, I got my freshman year of college, I got a very good friend of mine a record deal by recording him in my closet because there's a lot of clothes in there. So it sounded like a vocal booth. So I just ran microphone cable under the door and I realized I could spot talent. I could do some of these things and I started songwriting. But really the business side of it came when I started managing bands. I convinced my still business partner. We've been in business now since, 2002, I think. So, 20 years. And he's 30 years older than me, Jack, who you know. And, I convinced him to get involved in the entertainment business with me. He invested in the business with me. And then he saw what I was doing. He's basically through that process of law school, taking the bar, I got a big music opportunity that sort of disappeared. So I went to work with him for a bit, just sort of trying to figure it out. But he saw what I was doing for bands and building their brands. And when I had worked at Florida, University of Florida, I'd run promotions promotion and things for a bunch of, like, when we brought in comedians and bands, and he's like, man, if you entertainment's really hard. After we had done it for a few years, like, man, I see you working really hard and you're doing the right things. This is a hard business. He's like, let me tell you something. I think if you took that same skill set and applied it to business people, you'd make more money, you'd be happier, and you could feed your family. I'm like, I like all those things. And so, cause I got married at 22 after my first semester of law school. I had my first son at 25, second one at 27, and my daughter at 31. So I've got 3 kids, one that's 17, 14. Yeah. And 10. And so life was on fast forward from then. Like, I had to make money. My wife didn't want to go back to work. I didn't want her to go back to work. That's what we both wanted. And she never went back a day, but it was all like stress, market crashes. But anyway, so Jack says I should do this. And I started doing it, and we ended up building, it was multiple iterations. We ended up building the celebrity branding agency, which was, still the top, and I think only branding agency that focuses on personal branding, on people and their brands. And we built that up.
Let me pause you for a second.
Yeah.
Because that's a really, like, that I want to highlight the delineation between the path around creativity and business and how you built that and what exactly that was, and also time frame. Because we're sitting here in 2022 talking about personal brand, the spotlight on the need for personal brand today, and this clear departure from mainstream media versus, every individual that is public has an opportunity to have a personal brand. It's bright. It's hot right now, right? But you're talking about doing this in 2010?
07.
Something like that?
Yeah,
07, right?
Yeah.
So started in 07, and the idea was, and fill in the gaps here, but the idea was people that are either business people or artists need to be highlighted in some way to get more attention and look more important, get the as seen on credentials, to be highlighted as really, and this is 2007, but an influencer in their space or a center of influence in their space. Is that accurate?
It is. I would say the way I would particularly delineate it is, if you want a seat at the table, you have to look like you belong. And now, if you can't deliver, you're going to get kicked out of the table real fast. We've all seen that. Or if you're a shyster or you rip people off, whatever. But what I realized, and so there's that adage I've been quoting a lot recently. Like, you write the book. The author, and every author writes the book they need to read. Like, that's like a big deal. Like, you have this revelation, and really it's really for you as much or more than anybody else. I think I built the business I wanted to hire, right? Because again, I had been working in music as a kid and trying to get a seat at the table, man. Like, just what do I have to do? I read this book. It says, if you want to be in music, you got to have an entertainment lawyer. Well, I'm 16. I can't even return my phone call. It's not like I have connections, and my family's it just didn't happen. So I was just frustrated by the fact that there's a few barriers to entry that are, in a lot of cases, unnecessary and very hard. Like, if you look at it, it's not a fully fair representation, but I think it's an accurate one. A lot of times, to get on TV, to get on the news, to get in print publications and stuff, number one, a big function of it can be, how much money do you have to hire the right PR firm? Like, that's a big deal. And then who decides at the news station? Do you know them? Do you have a family friend? There's just so many variables. It's not completely editorial, no matter what anyone wants to tell you, or at the very least, people have biases. So I was like, well, that's frustrating. Like, I could be a heart surgeon saving people's lives every day, but the Orlando Sentinel doesn't find that interesting daily. So, like, what does it take to get someone like that featured, to get them to gain some credibility and some media attention, so that they can then use it in their business? And what I really figured out from working with the bands and the other things was, there's really this sort of trifecta in order to move something forward on all cylinders. And if you look, by the way, at any great personal brand or influencer or band, musician, speaker, they all have these things, and it's all 3 of these things you must have in order to operate on all cylinders, and that's media, marketing, and PR. The problem is, PR is super sexy, so a lot of people sell that, and I'm not saying it's a bad service, but if you have just PR without marketing to go with it, like, you just blew a bunch of money typically. Like, if you were on the front page of USA Today, I didn't see it. You probably didn't see it, and it's just going to disappear tomorrow. So what do you do with that? But the fact that if you were in it and you can use that in your marketing, well, man, now all of a sudden, you're not just another dentist in wherever. You're the dentist that's been on NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox affiliates across the country. You're a best-selling author. You've been in major print publications, Forbes, Inc., USA Today. And so I started figuring out, oh, wait a second. What we all really want is some credibility and different media to share our story. We want some PR to validate who we are. And then we need good marketing to let the world know we exist. And all those media credentials and good media will actually make people stop and pay attention. And ideally, you can find some number of clients that would be right fit clients. And the more you share your story, by the way, the good and the bad, the more authentic you are, the more you're going to attract right fit clients. That doesn't mean that by definition means most people probably aren't going to be a right fit. But the ones who are, as you know, it's really simple. Like people who really get how you operate and have similar views to you, have similar beliefs, and whether it's grit and hard work and determination or philanthropy or whatever it is, like it's easy to do business with them because they're like, oh, I trust this person because why? Because they're just like me. Great. Let's do business together. And so a big part of what I've done all along, I would just distill down to this and then I'll stop. Branding is simply storytelling, and a great brand is a story other people want to share for you. And so really the focus of everything I have done has become storytelling through documentaries. I mean, but of course it works through marketing. And if I trace it back really as a songwriter, starting to write songs at 15, that's one of the hardest forms of storytelling there is. You get like 12 lines, 2 verses and 1 chorus and maybe a bridge to bring someone into a scenario, make them laugh, cry, or feel differently about something. And then they move on and you're going to try to make them remember it. So I guess in a way I didn't really realize it, but I've always been fascinated by really good storytelling because of the human connection it brings. And that's what brands do. A good brand is just a great story.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of immediate takeaways from that. So the transitional point, like when I watched your arc of your life, you created this, and I met you probably in 10-ish.
Yep.
And so you were moving at that point, hot and heavy with a celebrity branding agency. And one of the things that you did, and I think this plays really well today too, and I actually think that people have learned from this and lean into it today. But one of the things that you did is you created a culture within the agency that made people want to be a part of it. So in addition to what they would get for their own persona and their own brand, you would do events for your clients that were ridiculous. Right. So like I went to the Grammys with you one year with your client base. Those are atypical things, but how did that fit in? Why did you do it? And how does it fit in today?
I've always thought that what we should be able to experience in life in many cases should be really left up to our imagination. I mean, we have to find ways to make them come true. But once we do, it's sort of like, when you get to a certain level, and again, I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to feel things. Like I'm starting to get invited to things that I wouldn't get invited to a year or two ago that are really like A-list celebrity, just interesting things that like I said, you're in. But once I realized that, again, everybody who does these things are normal people, and there's just different doorways to get in. There's like, how does this work? I mean, we could talk about, the Super Bowl. You can either get in by being a player, you can get in by spending $10,000 on a ticket, or there's another 100 ways you can get in by hosting a charity event, doing it. I mean, there's just a bunch of different ways. So once I started seeing how some of this world worked, I knew that much like myself, I'd want to go to the Grammys my whole life. I assumed there must be some other people. And I was working in music. I had a bunch of clients. I had clients nominated, clients win. And so I was squarely in the game. And I was like, well, my thing with my clients on the celebrity branding agency side has always been that I think entrepreneurs get downplayed an awful lot. Although I think that in many cases they are one of the economic heroes of the world with as long as they're operating correctly, they're creating jobs, they're creating revenue, they're doing a lot of things. But, most entrepreneurs are really in a place where, or at the very least, they just feel like, a lot of family doesn't understand what they do, is just waiting for them to go bankrupt. I mean, all these sort of common beliefs and like, what do you really do? How don't you just get a regular job and all these things? So I saw that entrepreneurs were doing great things, but in many cases, unless they had millions of dollars that they were sort of playing up here and able to just shovel money out, that they weren't getting invited to do really cool things. But those things were all open, and they're really open. If you get one of the biggest secrets I would say I ever discovered was that when you put a group of people together to accomplish something, it's so much easier to accomplish than like trying to do it on your own. So I did things like the Kentucky Derby. And so, it was just, I found people who were successful and were willing to contribute to the experience. And then I just found a way to give them value out of the experience. But there's not a whole lot of people, not a whole lot of people that I hang out with that aren't looking for unique, cool experiences. You being one of them. You just went to Antarctica. People who are successful are looking for different things to do because I think we learn from them. Again, I figured this out a few weeks ago. I thought I hated learning. I hate learning if you put me in a desk and make me read books for 8 hours. But why I do what I do is I'm actually fascinated to learn different people's points of view and why they think the way they do and what worked for them and where they come from and what's the humanity in it. And so, that's ultimately why we do it. I'm sure being in a place like Antarctica or being in a place like the Grammys for me or whatever, it makes you think differently. When you have a brain that's constantly looking for opportunity, it makes you think differently. And so that's why I want to do those things. So I wanted to show, a dentist, a doctor, a life coach that this world is open to you too. You just have to know how to get through the doors. And I happen to be through the door. So I'll take you with me.
But I think that that's one of the things that's unique about good entrepreneurs, and certainly unique about you. And my hypothesis is that some of this comes from the creativity that's built into the musician in you, right? The artist in you. But the question is, how do you create those things, right? And so you say, hey, I want to be able to take a group of people to the Grammys. How do I get access to that is one. The other is, how do I fund it, right? Coming from a bootstrap perspective. And you have done a very interesting and amazing job at allowing those things to collide. And so your approach to getting access to those things and to getting Emmys, for example, is unusual. And to the extent that I don't know anybody else that takes your approach to doing it. Can you dive into business model and how you structure things, how it works, how you make money?
Yeah. So, when I look at anything that I'm doing, obviously I run a business. I give back I give, and that's why I didn't take anything from anybody, so I don't have to give back. But I give a lot. But in my business, I'm here to make a profit. And so what I figured out is that price is only ever an issue when value is a mystery. Right. And so all I had to do is figure out how to make something more valuable than what people were paying for it. And in that case, you're doing what, we both know Dan Kennedy would say, you're buying money at a discount. So why wouldn't you do it? Only if you didn't have the initial buy-in. And so what I do in the film world, up to this point, I've never taken a single investment in a film. I've had people pay me to make films about them or about their business or whatever, branded content, which is getting to be a bigger and bigger world, of course. And then on top of that, I've raised money for the films that I've wanted to make, but I haven't taken investments. I took contributions. And the way I would explain that to many people, I would say, look, my crew, particularly one of my best friends, Rami is a really gifted cinematographer, now director for Amazon and many. He had a show we negotiated for him. He was the host of on Discovery Channel called Mummies Unwrapped. He's an Egyptologist. It's one of the most gifted guys I ever met in my life. And he fled Egypt during the revolution and he's killing it right now. But so he's really good at craps, spectacularly good at the game of craps. And I don't understand craps to save my life, but we've played, I think 14 times.
That's where we were going with this.
Yep. Well, we're taking you there. We've taken, we've won, I believe, I've doubled my money 13 out of 14 times. And so when I did that,
when he was,
there's a point where I had to ask myself, interesting, we have a system with where we put our chips, in the left pocket, right pocket, back, front, so we know where we're at. Right. And so at some point I'm just I'm close to running out. Am I going to keep playing or do I just cut my losses? But there's a visceral decision had to be made of I hate losing money. By the way, it's only a few $100s, but I don't like losing money. So I just have to make this decision. But it just didn't feel like a fun decision. It just was not fun. And so, but previous to that, I think I just spent with the crew like 3 times that on a sushi dinner at the casino before we went to play craps. And I'm like, so I sell sushi dinners, not craps games. I tell people, hey, here's exactly what you're going to get. Here's your experience, and here's the investment for you. It's not a monetary investment you're going to get a return on from me, from a return on the film. But let me show you the different ways you can be, at the very least, you can be the most interesting person in the room, in any room you're in. Cause if you get on board and fund my movie about Notre Dame legend Rudy Rudiger, like I'm going to take you with me to Notre Dame. You're going to sit in on Rudy's principal interview. He's going to take you on a tour of the campus. He's going to sign a helmet for you. You're going to be able to bring some guests to the movie premiere. I'm going to name you as an executive producer on the film. Like, what could I do that would give you, you get more than what you're paying for? And I demonetized it, quite frankly. And to me, that's one of the most powerful things I did, because people have really different expectations and investments. And I think you've probably found, just like I have, if you're not willing to invest enough to where it would hurt you to lose it, you're not going to get back enough that it would change your life or do anything for you. So even if I say, hey, Brad, would you invest $10,000 in this thing? I'm hoping to double your money. You're going to go like, I mean, if you want to help me, you'll help me. Like, that's okay. But like, none of us as entrepreneurs particularly we should be excited by 100% return. Now, I mean, if it was like guaranteed and you get it tomorrow, but when someone says that, then you know it's a scam, right? But as far as like in the general course of dealing, I just try to provide people with a really good deal, like really good value to help me accomplish things I want to accomplish. And then just for instance, to show you how it plays out, I always de-sell things. I'm like, hey, look, let me tell you how this really works. Let me tell you what's really important, what's not, and people listen to what they want to, but I tried very hard to make sure it's very clear. And people sign off like, this is not a monetary investment. This is a whatever, right? I do that. But also the lawyer in me makes people sign off on it. But on top of that, I've found ways to really make it unique. And so we're about to be my first one. We've had stuff on Netflix. We've had stuff on, but this, I'm about to sell a documentary. I can't talk about it particularly, but to a major network, like a huge network. And everyone who believed in me and was executive producers and paid a nominal sum of money. I mean, it wasn't like $10, but it wasn't $100,000 like you would have to put into a feature film, are all going to be executive producers on this major feature, probably one of the biggest documentaries of the year on this network. And they get to do it because I said, hey man, if you support me and ride with me, I'll take you wherever I go, whether that's in the Emmys, the Grammys, or to, major network and big premieres, film festivals, like let's go. And so people have been patient and supportive. I've done everything I can along the way to give them incredible experiences, I think I've given some of my clients the best memorabilia you are ever going to get in your life. Like, it's just, I've been able to do that. And so because it's interesting, when I am there, when I'm focused on my film, I'm also focused on sort of my stakeholders, my shareholders. Like, these people are here for a great experience. Like, what could I do to make it so that it's a no-brainer, that they get more than they bargained for? And so I've constantly focused on that. It's been really fun, and they've been patient, and things are starting to really pay off. And, a lot of that, Brad, as you would know, it's just like doing the right things, learning and getting better. And so that does take time. Like, your first, whatever you do is going to suck. And if it was the best one you're ever going to do, whatever it is, a painting, a podcast, a documentary, if your first one was your best one, you'd be depressed if you knew that going in. So thank God we know it's not going to be. So as a songwriting friend of mine says, dare to suck. So I just started daring to suck and trying to do what I could just to learn my way around. And I had people, I was very upfront about it, and I delivered and over-delivered on my promises. And I've had a ton of people do 8 or 10 or 12 projects with me that had zero financial return on them from a typical investing point of view, but they do it over and over again because the life experience side of it, what they've learned to do with it in their own marketing and their own positioning, has been worth it. And so that it's been a really fun and different model. My agent told me the other day, he's like, dude, I had never seen anyone do this way. Like, this is pretty impressive. And I was like, well, thanks. It's the only way I could do it. But it also allowed me to not let name the big name of the day, tell me what story I shouldn't do. Like, so that was big for me. Like, no, I want to tell the story because I want to tell it. I don't care if someone wants it or not. I think it's important to the world that this story be told. That happened with Rudy, the story I'm about to sell to this network. I went to them first and they said, that's not for us. And then there was a conversation a couple months ago. How much do you want? And so it was really nice as an entrepreneur to be told, like, that's nice, kid. No thanks. And then you go through and you do it anyway. And then on the other side, it's like, hey, by the way, we were wrong. What do we have to do? And so it's been fun to do sort of full circles on that stuff.
You said a couple of things that I think are really valuable. Several. But one was, if you're not investing enough for it to make you uncomfortable, the return's not going to be that valuable to you anyway. And I think that that's a really good lesson from an investment perspective, especially as you start to make more money and have sort of this wealth building mentality. If you're throwing an amount at it that's negligible, the return is going to be negligible too. It's not going to be life changing.
Which is a strategy too, by the way, and a smart strategy in a lot of cases. Like if you're trying to build a retirement portfolio, diversify, go for 6 to 7%. But I just think most people are really unrealistic on they want to give you, the $5,000 they had that they're looking for, and they want to win the lottery. And it's like, come on, that's just not how this works,
No, for sure. Well, I have a friend who the other day, in conversation referenced what he called a club investment. And what he meant by that was investments that are really there not for the return, but to be a part of a club. And this is like investing in a restaurant or a bar or a club.
I love that term.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the analogy would be like a country club, right? That's I think the origin, but it's functionally what you've managed to sell, which is, hey, look, here's all this stuff you're going to get. Here's the access. Here's the value, but the value isn't the financial return necessarily. And if you do a good enough job selling that, then you can devalue the monetary considerations because the value comes in other areas.
Absolutely. And I'm literally living proof. If you do it well enough, there's not even a question on what the financial return is going to be. It's sort of return on investment of life experience and other things. Like I mentioned, I'm doing this big documentary on literacy, and I try to do at least. So do you know Nito Cobain, Dr. Nito Cobain? Do you know him or know who he is?
No.
The best speaker I've ever seen in my life. One of the top two for sure. Came to America with $50 in his pocket, Lebanese. Now he's the president of High Point University. He's raised $1.5 billion in the past 15 years for a 3,000, 4,000 student university. And his story it's unmatched. Anyway, he's the Walt Disney of now, this private university, essentially. It's mind blowing. I have an episode of my Amazon show called In Case You Didn't Know with Nick Nanton. It's on Nito Cobain. People should watch it. He's mind blowingly good. But he said something to me. I interviewed him during the pandemic, and he said, Nick, I think a life well lived is a life lived in thirds. 1/3 earning, 1/3 learning, 1/3 serving. And I've always believed that, but he said it way more eloquently than me. So I'm going to quote him for it and give him credit for it. But so in my documentaries that I make that I have my clients fund, I try to make 1/3 of them about we did one on Jay Abraham. So we spent days with Jay Abraham, learning how to earn more and be better at what we do. Then I try to do 1/3 of them about learning, hey, how can we be learning about different things, whether that's microloans or poverty or human trafficking or whatever. And then all these also cross over, but I also try to do a 1/3 serving. So in a lot of cases, I'll try to do a very humanitarian driven or a societal issue driven documentary. And, we've done a lot of those and taken some people on some pretty magical journeys. We've stayed at orphanages in Mexico, and we've worked on reversing poverty, and we've worked on microloans and met women-owned business owners in Dominican Republic. And so it's really been fun, but a lot of people would tell me that, some of the most unique experiences, some of the richest experiences in their life have been as part of these films, because, when you have camera will travel. The other thing that I also have learned is that I have an unfair advantage with documentaries because you put in raw ingredients, but what comes out on the other side is an exponential deliverable. It's exponentially greater than the sum of the parts you put in. You put in a bunch of footage, but what comes out is this emotional, moving human piece. So I can demonetize that too. I can get a lot of people, celebrities and others, to spend time with me for no money because I'm going to include them in this thing, or I'm going to feature them in this thing and make a whole piece about them. And that's how I met Larry King, how he ended up becoming my business partner. Like, that's a whole other story before he passed away, but it's because I provided a value, but I took raw ingredients that cost me what they cost me, but the value to him and to others is exponentially greater than the sum of the time they put in and the raw materials. And it's like, it's an unfair advantage in a lot of cases. And I didn't honestly have any clue about that walking into it at all.
It is, but that's also fundamentally the proposition of business at large, right? Is that hopefully the ingredients that you have as an entrepreneur inside your company are far smaller than the output that you produce. And hopefully that's the exchange with all businesses. Out in yours, the example you just gave is, I think, beautiful because you're creating this emotional piece that doesn't exist, right? You're building the emotion, you're creating the narrative, and really deliberately doing that. Purely from a execution perspective, how the fuck do you do it? So like starting at the beginning, right? So you built an agency. Building an agency is a thing, and having employees and managing them to do this and execute. And then that somehow transitioned into, presumably you've got, a film crew that shoots this stuff. And, you said travel with camera, right? And you moved into managing and executing that. What is the, from an entrepreneurial perspective, what is the kind of operational framework? Like, how many people are involved? How do you keep it organized? How do you structure it? How does it work?
Yeah. So from to give credit where it's due, building the agency, I would have struggled a lot more with building that agency. I would probably have done some things differently too, just out of nature of it being just me. But my mentor and business partner, Jack, really helped me build that agency. And I started learning how to let go, because it's a really big leap from doing everything yourself to even hiring your first employee that you feel like completely responsible for. It's like buying your first home or your last home. I mean, if you're upsizing and growing, in which we all want to do, we want to grow for most of our lives. It's from the moment you get it, you then worry about, am I going to lose it, right? Because you're just like, wait, I hope I can keep this. And so same thing with people, it's like that too. It's like, oh my gosh, now not only is my family relying on me to eat, but these other families and all that stuff. So Jack really helped me with that process, which is, I would be remiss if I can't even calculate the value of that. But then he had never made films before. He had worked with a business that had done infomercials before. And I had done some music videos and stuff in college, like shot them and edited myself and all that stuff. And I learned sort of what it takes. And I learned, for whatever reason, I could make things that were decent, but I didn't know how to make it look like that. And so as I started getting into filmmaking, I was like, who do I need in my team to make this stack up? Just like I did in music, I would be like, we would make a record at the time, a CD, and we would get distribution, but we were all broke in college. But we'd have to do things to make it stack up next to the Metallica CD in the store. This is even before iTunes. I mean, it came around when a little while after we started doing it. But like one time we couldn't afford to get a band photo. So I talked to a buddy of mine who was broke and we paid him like $50 he was a cartoonist. He drew the band as cartoons, and we made the album. They were a power pop band. 3 guys made it power pops. It looked like corn pops, and it looked like they were snap, crackle, and pop. But it cost us $50 instead of like $500 at the time for a band photo shoot. So it's all about like, who do I need to make a product that can allow me to compete in the marketplace at the budget I've got? That's like always my question. So I just would look, and I would say one of my unique abilities, I would guess, is that I've been able to, my whole life, like I talked about getting a kid a record deal my freshman year in college, like I've been able to recognize talent. And I think I have a self-awareness that realizes that I don't have that talent, and I need someone with that kind of talent to do what I want to do. Like I got into Nashville songwriting in a lot of cases because my buddy, who is such a great singer that I got a record deal for, everyone wanted to work with him. So I'd go along. I'd book the appointment. I'd go along, and we worked together. But it's just being, just trying to be smart. But I was providing value on both sides, so I get to come along too. And so with filmmaking, I would put it this way, just to try to be somewhat practical for people, if anyone's interested in learning how. Like in documentaries, you sort of know the story you're telling, but you typically don't know the whole story. So the way I do it is I have a producer who writes an outline for me. If I'm working with a personality or a person, we sort of have them break down their story for us, and then we have them sort of list who would be important people, places, things, events that were seminal to them in their life. And I really break stories down into 3 categories because I'm not that smart. It's before, during, and after. Like, what happened before now, what's happening in your life right now, what's your vision for the future? Like, what does that look like? And then we go after and we interview them. We block and tackle essentially with, camera crew. I take typically 2 camera guys everywhere I go. I get cursed for it. Sometimes I never take a sound guy because we can all sort of do functionally enough sound. It's never got me in trouble. And I've always found up to this point that with the budgets that I have, not saying with bigger budgets, it wouldn't be valuable, but it was always more valuable for me to have more picture than it was for me to have more sound. And so take 2 camera guys and me typically. And I have a field producer who sets up everything beforehand. We go get everything. And then I literally get everything I think I can get. I follow the story. And of course, usually leads to, oh, you should talk to this person, talk to that person. Oh, you didn't hear about this, go do this, whatever. And then when I think I have it all, like tomorrow, I think I'm filming my last in-person interview for my literacy documentary. I basically take all the footage and all the drives and slide them over to my main editor and say, you are Michelangelo. This is the block of marble. I know you can only carve the statue that exists in this marble. Go for it. And I don't even typically see any of it till it's done. And when it comes back, I'll say, and we've done like 50 movies together now too, but even the first one, the second movie I ever did for me was Peter Diamandis. And I typically might have 3 or 4 edits of like, hey, I remember interviewing this person that said something like this. It didn't make it, and I thought it was really insightful. And you go, let me go look and see, okay. And be like, it didn't fit, or he didn't say what you thought, or she didn't say what you thought you said, or I can't make it work. And I'll say, okay, or hey, dig deeper into this person's story, or but we'll have a few conversations. And just everyone I work with all along the way is one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. I use the Jeff Bezos principle I learned out of the Bezos letters by Steve Anderson. Is Jeff Bezos has a principle: never hire someone you don't admire. And that's in every portion of your life, from person who cleans your office to an assistant to even things that many people would think, I don't think you should, but think are below them. Like, never hire someone you don't admire, like someone who loves to clean or loves to do things you don't love to do. And believe me, they exist. So I only hire people that I admire, and they're really good people. So even if we disagree on certain things, they're the best in the world, and we're going to work together to make the best film we can. And so it's all about, giving them the leeway to do what they do well. Of course, making sure it aligns with my initial vision, but being not ego driven enough to let go and say, but hey, here's what I think I've got, but I trust you. Show me what I really have, and tell me if you think I really missed something, and I'll try to go pick it up. But that's practically how I approach it.
That's awesome. So as an analytical operator, how do you do it technically? Like, when you were running an agency, presumably you had a project management software and you put things in it, and there were different parties that own different tasks. From a filmmaking perspective, I got the creative narrative of how it goes down. How does it get tracked? How do you manage part 1, 2, 3? How do you communicate around it? How do you make sure nothing slips through the cracks?
So up till just very recently, it was all in my head. I just knew what was going on. I knew what had hard deadlines, what didn't, who needed to get delivered to, who I needed to check in with, who I just could do that. But now we have, I think, 5 films, feature documentaries in editing. We're about to start a 8-episode docuseries. And I'm just like, okay, at some point, this is just my head's just gonna explode. So I have had help along the way with doing the activities. From a producer who's super gifted. She's great. She does a lot of my writing. She does a lot of my scheduling. She does a lot of things. But up to this point, most of it was all tracked in my head, and that's just what it was. But now they're moving into Asana, just a project management software. So at all times we can see if we need to get off this project for 3 days and re-edit this, how is it going to slide all the timelines and all that stuff? Because at some point, I'm now at the point where my brain can't. I can keep up with about 5 to 6 films at a time, but now it's getting to be like, a docuseries of 8 is like 8. It's like having 8 films in one project, and so there's some economies of scale in the ways you handle it, but it's just it's a different process. So we did the one docuseries for James Altucher. That's also on Amazon. Choose Yourself, the James Altucher story. Fascinating dude. 8-part docuseries, I think, in 7 or 8 parts. So I learned from that, but then that was. I have a lot going on, and thankfully opportunity keeps coming, and I want to keep producing great content, even if I can't direct it all. So now it is going into project management software. But up to this time, it's just been, I just knew in my head.
Yeah, that's makes my head want to explode. I don't know how you do 50 documentaries and keep all of the timelines and the whole thing in your head and just communicate through it. And I suppose, historically, maybe that's how business happened. We haven't had project management software forever. But that's amazing.
I happen to have a talent for multitasking, I guess, especially when I'm not doing everything, right? I can keep up with a lot of, you know this about me too. I think you're good at, I keep up with a lot of people. I keep up with a lot of projects. Like I text a lot of people to see how they're doing. I try to anyway. So that's part of what I enjoy doing is like keeping up and keeping relationships going. So to me, it was just really an extension of that because I typically am making films with people, my crew who I enjoy working with. They're all my best friends. I travel the world with them. It's great. And we see each other somewhere else in the world every week. Could be Iraq one day, could be Haiti one day, could be Columbus, Ohio one day. It's just, hey man, how's it going? Just saw you 3 days ago. And so I just keeping up with them. And then when it gets to the edit process, we were typically only editing 1 to 2 films at a time. Now it's more. So that's where it gets more complex.
Well, I always love getting time with you because I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I always know it's going to be interesting.
Likewise.
Man, it's great. And I hope that we'll figure out a time to get our paths across here in the near future.
Vegas.
What are you working on right now? Vegas? Oh yeah. Vegas is coming up. What's happening in Vegas?
I'm getting honored with a star on the sidewalk, which was pretty cool. So I'm throwing a big charity party because I want to party with my friends, but I don't want it to be about me. So it's going to be fun.
Very squarely about you, and it's exciting. That's cool, man. So what are you excited about right now, and where can people find you?
My name, thankfully, is unique. It's Nick Nanton, all ends, as in Nick. The good news is I only have one cousin who is foolish enough to name his son that as well. And I told him as long as he doesn't mind his son being crushed in the internet and social media the rest of his life, that's a great name. But you can find me pretty much everywhere at Nick Nanton, nicknanton.com. And I'm happy to serve, help in any way I can with anybody who's listening. Of course, if you sign up on my mailing list or join social, it's always super helpful. If you like it, I don't expect everyone to like every project I'm working on, but it's always really helpful if you're into something I'm doing on human trafficking or literacy or Larry King to share it. That's really the currency of my life at this point. Thankfully, I have really great outlets for the content, but if people don't know it exists, it doesn't matter. So super thankful to get any outlet. Always appreciate talking to you, and hopefully they can find me there.
I love it, man. I appreciate the time, dude. If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.